I want to start with that by, first of all, thanking everybody for staying until the last minute. That's amazing. That really demonstrates the appetite for this type of events and our commitment, talking about CCG, to continue these collaborations and enabling these spaces for co-creation with all the relevant stakeholders in Africa. We're very, very pleased to have partnered with the Presidential Climate Commission as well as the African Energy Futures on this journey. These last 3 days had been terrific. Lots of lessons learned, lots of things to take back home and work on then, to come back to all of you and start co-creating that agenda that had been already discussed. I think lots of the things we discuss, maybe summarizing better tools that can better communicate to stakeholders for better policy, more robust policy. It doesn't mean that this has to be the optimal solution from the space. It needs to be something that we co-created and we know it's going to be implementable. Sometimes the optimal plan is just not implementable because it does look mathematically perfect, but physically, socially, politically, environmentally, is just not possible. So having all these tools that interface with the right policymakers in the right spaces through co-creation processes really strengthened those outputs of the models. Communicating the right messages to the stakeholders is not about the outputs of our technical tools, but it's how we translate that into messages that will be insightful for the decision-making process. It's not about the installed capacity, it's who is going to pay for that, when is it going to need it, what is going to happen with those power plants that are not going to be operating in 5-10 years, who is going to pay for those jobs that may be destroyed, how are we going to reskill those workers that may be losing the job and they still have an opportunity to be reskilled. How are we going to discuss the early retirement in some cases when that early retirement does apply? All these are questions that are not coming from osmosis or clues, but they are giving us enough information to have a discussion. And having a multidisciplinary team that translates these technical outputs into social, environmental, political outputs is critical. Is really, it changes completely the way we are engaging with the stakeholders. Having that multidisciplinary team allows us, in my experience, to have a very high-level discussion while still keeping the technical robustness behind. Because that robustness from the tools that we are building together must prevail. I'm not saying that the tools need to be adjusted, not. We only need to learn how to use it for policy making. And that takes time, in my experience. We need to keep the momentum. I think there is a momentum that we've been building, and we've been discussing the last 3 days about this. One key thing I wrote here, and it just came out in this last panel, but I think is super relevant. We don't need to reinvent the wheel in countries. We need to reuse the spaces that are there. Every country already had a process in place to create policy. There is a meeting between the Minister of Finance, maybe there is a committee, there is a technical working group. How do we use those spaces to engage our analysis and start building or start supporting that discussion? Doesn't mean that we have to create a new working group with the Minister of Finance and the Director of taxes or revenue, and then the Minister of Planning and the Director of Planning. No. Maybe let's find how we can engage there. Everybody will have to play a key role here, from the funders to the academics, but also the different processes or institutions in the country. In some cases, I have noticed those colleagues making decisions do come from our university, and that has been for me one of the key issues. The Director of Energy in Costa Rica and the regulator of Costa Rica were my students. I was putting an IKI grant a month ago, and last minute, well, not last minute, but 2 days before the submission, I realized that I needed to have endorsement letters. And I was like, gosh, I got 2 days to get endorsement letters. For those of you not working with governments, 2 days is almost impossible. But I was like, no, I'm gonna make this possible. Just 2 phone calls. Look, I know you're gonna kill me. I know it very well, but can you help me with this support letter? Wrote the support letter. I explained the project through the phone call, and I said, there is no commitment that you have to do this. It's just that the idea resonates and may be implementable in the country. We got the 2 support letters because they were also my students. And I think somebody mentioned today, that connection is very important. They trusted the work that I've been doing over the last 10 years in Costa Rica. And they were like, yeah, I know if you are proposing this, it must be good. So they were like, we are happy to endorse it. Therefore, we got the letters, we submit the proposals, so fingers crossed we're gonna get it. Here is 501 proposals submitted to the IKI. Only 20 are gonna be funded, so, chances are high. I think, we need to define some priorities, but also the last thing I'm gonna say is how we already leverage the existing academic spaces we have. Master students, PhD students, how we maybe start addressing those policy questions with a lens of the academic side, because we have to recognize if it is a PhD, there has to be this innovation always. But that's a way to start discussing with policymakers. Then we may tailor that specific PhD thesis to address the very specific question that is being asked by the policymaker. But we have a solid ground with that PhD thesis that is being developed, because you already have a model, you have understanding of the system and so on, and that could be a very easy and quick win entry point to our policymakers. Again, those policymakers are likely to come from your university, so they will be very keen as well to hear what the academics are doing, because they come from your university. So again, let's leverage that network that we also discussed about networking before. So really think there are very, very, very insightful things we discussed the last 3 days. And yeah, I'm very pleased. I did this trip to South Africa. It's also my first time in South Africa, but I feel like I must come back. So thank you very much, everybody, for the insights, the knowledge that we have shared. It's been 3 days that I'm gonna sleep so well in the flight back, because my brain is just processing all this information. So it's gonna be terrific, and just a very short flight back to London. And I really look forward to see you all, maybe here, maybe somewhere else in the next high-level meetings or other spaces. Thank you very much from my side, and I would love to call Andile for some closing remarks as well from the PCC team.
All right, thank you very much. Please do come back. I hope we treated you very nicely.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, we are famous for that. We'll kill you with kindness here. All right, thank you very much.
I will. I'm gonna sit here. Sorry.
All right. Thank you very much. Thank you, Steve. Thank you, Chairperson. And thank you for bringing together the modeling community from all across the universities, And it reminds me of something, on day one, my colleague Simpiwe said something, She put a disclaimer that she was not prepared to be the facilitator, but she did a good job. So I also need to give a disclaimer that I'm not a modeler. I'm from civil society, so being in this space, I learned a lot. And I really appreciate that, I felt to be part of the family, and I learned a lot, I think as I will be sharing my short reflections, I just want to thank you. And I want to thank, again, Professor Adiola, Thank you so much for bringing youth into this space. You know, I think the presentation that came across was very powerful. And other universities, of course, you know, because we had great presentations from young people, which is very important for the future of modeling. So thank you very much. And Professor Joseph as well, thank you very much. You know, when we were having our round table, he brought a very strong element of that in his modeling work. He also involves civil society, you know, through special interest groups. So thank you very much for that. And then from the Valley University, Professor Dube as well, thank you so much, because at the PCC, we have what we call is a youth leaders caucus. So he's part of that. He's involved, he's working with young people. So thank you very much for that. Can you please give them a round of applause? So over the past 3 days, you know, a recurring theme has been that modeling is at its core and an exercise in telling stories. That results we generate are shaped by stories we choose to tell, and just as importantly, the stories we live out. This raises a fundamental point. In the modeling we do, we ultimately inform decisions that attract people's lives. Those people reflected in the stories of our models is a question. Inclusion is not only a matter of fairness, you know, but also of accuracy and relevance. How close are our stories to the reality of world that we are impacting? So it's one of the things that we must continue to, you know, to talk about as modelers, as partners in this war of climate change. Remember, the last time that people came together is during COVID. That's where everybody came from, science, civil society, government. They came together to, you know, to have ideas shared. So with this, we have reflected in these past 3 days on through several examples during the conference. For example, do our models meaningfully represent those in an informal sector, or do our models only reflect a world of formal employment? Do we have stories about distributional impacts and effects on inequality of a transition, or do we prioritize purely least cost pathways? Do we include costs of climate impacts when we allocate resources, or focus narrowly on mitigation? It's a question again. These are not purely technical choices, they are narrative choices that shape our outcomes. At the same time, we have also been honest about constraints we face. Data availability and access has remained significant barriers to the work that has been done here. Institutional arrangements, intellectual property concerns, and inconsistencies across data sets complicate the work that has been done. Yet, as was noted, these challenges are not only technical, they are also organizational and relational. We have a responsibility to address these challenges where possible. And this leads to my second reflection. There's a clear opportunity to improve the craft, not only in terms of technical sophistication, but also in thinking clearly about the relevance of the questions we spend our time on, and how strongly our work links to actual impacts in the real world. Crucially, improving this craft will depend on collaboration. What has emerged strongly is that modeling is inherently multidisciplinary and multi-institutional. It requires stronger linkages between academia, industry, government, civil society, and the vulnerable groups. It requires better use of existing data and a shared effort to align and curate it. It requires building local capacity to tell local stories and fostering trust in both processes and the outputs. No one person, one group can achieve this in their own. No one can work in silos. We also need to be explicit about the assumptions embedded in our models and make this visible to those who use and are affected by them. Transparency is not only about openness of data and methods, but also about clearly communicating what is included, what is excluded, and why. This creates space for scrutiny, for dialogue, and for iterative improvement. It also helps to ensure that modeling does not become a closed exercise, but remains accountable to the broader social context. It seeks to inform rather. In doing so, we need to strengthen both the credibility of our work and its usefulness in supporting decisions that are robust, equitable, and grounded in reality. Then finally, before Steve comes. I'm sure you're ready to come now. There is a clear urgency to this work. As we have heard, climate change is not a distant concern, and the question we are trying to answer are not abstract. They are already shaping decisions with immediate and long-term consequences. This places a responsibility on us to ensure that our models are not only methodologically rigorous, but also relevant to the policy choices at hand, transparent in their assumptions and limitations, and responsive to the complex realities they are meant to inform. In practice, this means engaging more closely with decision makers, continuously updating our work as a new evidence emerges, and being deliberate about aligning our outputs with timescales and needs of those acting on them. If you're going to take anything forward from this meeting, it is this. The quality of our modeling will depend on the quality of the stories we are willing and are able to tell together. So with that, thank you very much. And Steve, you can come and do the closing.
That was a great summary, so I don't have much left to do. But I want to thank a couple of people, and I know I thanked these people yesterday, but you can never thank people enough. So thank you to Jürgen again for organizing the program. And to the rest of the PCC team for Simpiwe for facilitating on the first day and so on. And then also to CCG for your support, not just in this program, but we co-hosted together the EMPA also in Cape Town earlier this year, where I think we had 70-something students from around Africa doing open source modeling training. So we're looking forward to a long partnership with you. And then, of course, again, to the team that actually did all the hard work on organizing the venue, and so Jackie and the team, and then to the AV team, thanks very much. It was flawless, which is great and unusual. And I just want to say that I'm really pleased with how things went. Like, I really enjoyed this conference. You know, I enjoyed every single session, and normally you can kind of rank which ones you liked and which ones you didn't, but I genuinely had a really great time. There are two kind of things to deal with. One is the going forward question. And I'm always a little bit nervous about like putting things down in reports. The real thing that we hope to gain from this is community and bringing you all together, getting to know some of you face to face. I've only been on calls with you, has been a real pleasure. And we hope that this kind of continues. That's kind of the idea, and it was hinted at earlier, like we are now a team. Draw on each other, help teach on each other's programs, you know, ease your load like that. If you have questions about how something was done in a particular country, you know, there are a lot of countries in the room. So draw down on each other and let's try like keep this community going. And it does require some leadership. We have to do it. It's not going to happen on its own. No one's going to pay you to do it. But I think the benefits for us and for the continent will be enormous. What we want to do at Africa Energy Futures, apart from repeating our call for proposals, is we want to be able to help coordinate this community, at least the Africa level, help create spaces for you to be able to coordinate within your country, but also then to coordinate a community of people who can support you. You know, how can we draw down on some of the international support, like the International Energy Agency, like SE for All, other northern universities, other southern universities? How can we start to help you on that? And we also invite you to really engage with us on that. Practically speaking, we will do, our plan is to put each of the sessions on our website. Basically treat it as a separate event. I think we can kind of cut and paste them, and then people can look at what is interesting to them, and you're also able to use that as a resource within your own country. So if you're getting questions about a particular thing, please feel free to use that. We will write a kind of summary report, and particularly from today, and I want to thank you for today. It's always kind of tricky to have these kinds of feedback discussion sessions because you can completely disengage. But nobody did, you know. And Jairo kept calling tea, and then you would stay sitting, and then he He was so confused. He's like, why are they still here? And then 10 minutes later, you're still here. So that was fantastic to see. And we're really grateful that you would respect the process enough to take the time to give us this input. And hopefully we will be able to get some really strong guidance from that. And Shem, I've been WhatsApping Kunda ideas every like 5 minutes. Oh, we should do this. Oh, and this would be helpful. So we've got a big to-do list for ourselves. But we'll write some of that up. And I think the big challenge to you all is what can you do in the short term that doesn't require a massive resource effort that will enhance your impact. And yeah, the last thing that I wanted to address is Africa Energy Futures is all about capacity building. But what is it? What is capacity building? Like, do we really have a good answer of that? Most people think about capacity building as skills, but it's more than skills. It's about skills and institutions and systems. The way that Yuba Sukona describes it is the ability for a country to set and implement its own future. Right? You're not dependent on any external sources. You're not dependent on any foreign funding. This is African countries making decisions for themselves. And that is kind of what we're after. And so that is the broad plan of the AEF. Now, someone said earlier that the label champions is too intimidating. I've got bad news and good news depending on your perspective. The reason you are in this room is because you are already champions. Right? You were selected to attend this conference because you're already doing amazing things. And we're hoping to support you in that. So don't worry about the pressure of being champions. It's a done deal. So that's it from me. Just a final thanks to all of you. You are the community, and we're really, really excited and looking forward to working with you. And we wish you safe travels back tomorrow whenever you're heading back. I know some people have chopped on some time to visit Cape Town, which is always a good idea. But from the AEF side, we plan to host another one of these conferences towards the end of the year. It will not be in South Africa. At the moment, it's likely going to be in Kenya, but we haven't finally decided yet. So there will be another opportunity to engage. And until then, have a great rest of the year. Thanks, everybody.